Hey, what's up guys? How's it going? So today we are going to talk about how to make a rally trap. So the very first thing we're going to talk about is composition. And whenever you're building a rally trap, typically every rally trap is going to have about 2 million or so T4. If you want to make a party rally trap, the only difference is instead of having 2.5 million or so typically for a normal single solo rally trap, a multi-party rally trap will try to go as high as 3.5 to 3 million T4 because they need the damage and the fact that they're probably going to do a bunch of hits. The problem with every rally trap in general, okay, is that you want to stick to the lowest amount of might possible. So for most people, traditionally, that's 500 mil. If you go past 500 mil, you go to 600, 700, 800, or 900 mil, it's not that you can't trap, you just might find yourselves a little bit more open to maybe not getting hit at all. Like, it's a very real possibility, but that is not to say that if you go to some of the major war kingdoms, that's not a prerequisite for them. It doesn't matter. Okay? As far as T2 troop count goes, typically every rally trap that I've known will only have anywhere between 4 million and 6 million T2. You can do this with as low as 4 mil, but the downsides of having only 4 million T2 across, okay, is that you run the risk of dipping too far and then you get dipped into your T4s, and that's not something you want to have happen. So I would say strongly, if anything, try to stay above 6 million, because 6 million gives you plenty of room. And nowadays, if you make a mistake, and this is the key here, if you make a mistake, which is to say you get countered, you're going to lose more than half of that in a single rally against Astrolite, Mythic Chant players. It's even worse if you get hit by Emperor and so on, so you very, very, very strongly do not want to make the mistake of having too few T2. And since they're such a cheap unit to produce, the one thing that most people do as far as producing them is using them with gems. Okay, and as far as the build goes, okay, my recommendation is not to go and build a bunch of barracks and produce them. Build yourself like 5 or 6 barracks and then even the rest out with infirmaries, and only have an infirmary of around 400 to 500k. If you want to build all infirmaries and go 7k, you're gonna find yourself eventually having to rebuild. And you can go back and forth, but frankly, the cost associated to doing that, you better be willing to just drop all of your T2. And then once you're at that point, break it down, go all barracks, and then rebuild them all back up. But if you're not willing to do that, where you drain yourself of all your T2 at a certain point, then you really shouldn't do that. I would recommend a balanced approach when you're building a rally trap. I will mention that if you are doing a party trap, party traps go up as high as 12 million T2 across. Okay, they go absurdly high, but they don't give a damn about their might anymore, because they're just wanting to just eat as many as they possibly can and think not of their consequences, okay? And those guys rotate phalanxes and such in such a way that it's a whole different animal, but that's approximately what they're using, okay? As for gear, okay, the only gear I feel like a lot of rally traps ought to be using is going to be very similar to a set that I created way back in the day. Now, by no means is this the best of the best, right? Okay, you're going to aim for the Skull Crusher, the Winter Mitts, the Firewall Plate, the Bumble Helm. You might get Talons if you can, otherwise you can just as easily pick a pair of Strides or, get a different piece of gear here. Because you could go Tassets, but I'm not a big fan of Tassets. Obviously, you don't want to go Gargantuan Belt, but the main thing being here is that you're wanting to get the HP that you're going to get from those boots, which is why, between the Talons and the Strides, it's just kind of a question of money at that point. All right. Beyond that, though, you definitely want mitts. And as far as your accessories go, typically people will either start out with Burning Scrolls, and they'll have a set of Burning Scrolls. They'll work their way from Burning Scrolls to Blight Rings. After they've gotten Blight Rings, they'll eventually start replacing those Blight Rings with Ambrosial Caps. And now, as we've been talking, all right, we've already discussed basically what you're going to need in terms of composition and gear. Okay, now the next thing you need to probably consider is also all the different places you can get stats. Okay, and this can be in the form of castle skins, which again, these are going to give you about 10% across. Just little nitpicks like this that are, worth mentioning. Like if you got Vergeway, You can do Verge Weight, get some, get up to 20% across in there. I mean, artifacts, obviously, you can get quite a bit in artifacts. There's really nothing wrong with getting any artifacts, but if I had to make a suggestion, I would focus on the core stats and then also get the leader stats, but do not bother with the Fury stat artifacts. The Fury stat artifacts I wouldn't bother with. Those can come third after you've already gotten the core and the leader bonus artifacts. So once you've encountered that, one thing that you will more than likely come to look at next is counter research. Okay, now you're going to want this as a trap. All right, you basically want to make sure that you get these counter boosts. Okay, that's like not even a given. You will most likely get this. You will more than likely do the bare minimum required for a lot of these other trees, though. I don't know about most people, but I feel as though you really only need to have 3 battle slots. You don't need 4. You can go as high as 4. You can go to 5 if you want to. The more you add, though, the more might you have, and the fewer troops you're going to be able to play with. Because the more might you have, if you're playing by the rules of the lowest amount of might possible to be a trap, to be considered a trap these days, then I would say don't bother doing some research that is going to inflate that might. If it's unnecessary, then don't bother. Obviously, this goes for T5 units. Like, yes, you can build a T5 trap if you so choose, but once you've committed to that, you are not going to be able to go backwards. This is why if you're just building a solo rally trap, you're more than likely not going to bother with that stuff. You're not going to see that as a relevant thing to get into. One thing you'll want to grab is Jade Worm, and you want to max him out, and if you can, also get his Divine Fire ability and max that out as well. And once you've done that, the only other familiars that you want to probably pay any attention to is Blackwing, Gargantua, and Bon Appetit. Okay? The only reason I mention those 3 is because these are 4%, 600% when maxed. And you can get these during Tycoon, so this is effectively, if you're going to get those, that's how to do it. Don't bother buying the $5 pack. But most of the time, most traps are not going to bother with these. They're just going to grab Evil Weevil, Magus, Noceros, and Mole Shaman. You might have somebody grab Pyrus. If anybody's using Trickstar, Jimming Gremlin, Gryphon, you're doing it wrong. And the only reason why is because the influx of loss has got to be more than 10% before that triggers. So I don't really recommend doing that. The same thing applies for shields. Don't bother with the shields. Don't bother with Mega Maggot. That's just a waste of time. Don't bother doing it. If you don't have to do it, don't. But beyond that, really, if anything, you just want to focus on basically getting those that I've mentioned. You can also, if you're on a budget, you can get Jazeek, Terraspike, and Magmalorn. The benefit of those 3 is much in the same way that Aquarius is, or Evil Weevil for that matter, because Evil Weevil is a 15% bonus to your HP, but your Aquarius is a minus 15% HP drop for your opponent. I personally like Terraspike and Magmalord and the others, mainly because of the 40% drop in HP, which is a pretty significant drop. So depending on whether or not if, let's say, somebody's sending an Inf Blast, you can pop a Terraspike and knowingly bring their HP down quite a bit if you put them on the wall. That assumes you know that in advance, though. You don't, then you're probably not going to find this terribly helpful, but a lot of the time people will pick a Phalanx, so they'll sit in range, and so they're just going to assume that they're either going to run into range, cav, or infantry. So there's not any harm in picking a 40% drop in these 3, but by all means, you can mix and match with some of them. I preferably like to use just one and not all 3 at the same time. Now, regarding that, okay, the other area that you're going to look at is Chronicler for counter boost research. And Chronicler, you just want Chronicler in part because you're going to get another 15%. And this is, again, just going back to the fact that counter boost research is a super, super helpful thing to have in a rally trap. Now, as far as heroes are concerned, you're going to more than likely start out with, like, Child of Light. You're going to have all the base heroes. I mean, you can get Tracker, Child of Light, Rose Knight. You can also bother getting Bombing Goblin and Demon Slayer because you want the 50% HP and attack. I think the most logical direction that anybody can go in, though, is you'll eventually want to get pay-to-play heroes. And if you're wondering which pay-to-play hero do I get, I suggest you get heroes like, you know, Lore Reaver for that, for one thing, right? Because you're going to get quite a bit for this. I think you also try to get Watcher, because you're going to get training speed with Watcher, but you're also going to get HP and attack. This is another noteworthy thing that, you know, frankly, if you can do it, do it. You're going to be thanking me later, because you want Watcher. And then the next one up from that is Stormfox. And I bring them up because the main thing with that is that you want to have either 2 of one type of any, you know, so basically you'll have 2 heroes for one type, 2 heroes for one type, and 1 hero for one type. And what mixture and combination you do is really up to you. But what matters most of all is that they're mixed and that you're trying to maximize either the amount of HP and attack you have, and you don't bother, you know, not getting the most amount of bonuses you can get into the areas that you don't have, you know. So if you can get, like, say, a Songstress of the Sea, a Berserker, those are all good additives. You know, obviously if you can get Dream Witch, which for most people that's expensive as hell, but you can do it. You know, I just think for the average player, you're not going to focus on someone like Dream Witch right out of the gate, right? But you're more than likely going to get Chronicler. You know, and so these are the heroes that I suggest so far, you know. And so if you're going to focus on them, at least when you're starting out anyway, you're probably going to have Child of Light, Bomb and Goblin, Demon Slayer, Oathkeeper, Tracker, and you're going to have Rose Knight, and you're just going to kind of rotate. You want to check out a couple of YouTube channels. Duck Hunter Gaming is a good source for any type of rally trapping. Crystal Briefs is good for any type of questions you might have regarding mechanics or anything related to the game in terms of morale, to a lot of other subjects. There's a lot of things that Crystal Briefs has that I've found to be pretty interesting. Obviously, if you're just looking for channels to watch that do rally trapping, I highly recommend checking Down on the Trap, Mag Trap, and I believe there's even some other channels that are out there on the subject that you'll find. But as far as my channel is concerned, I mean, I've been rally trapping with my alt here, the Rickus Rick, and I'm fixing to start playing around with a Gold Faith and a pair of Mythic Cups and a full set of Mythic Gears. So if this is the type of stuff that you like to see, you're more than welcome to join and be part of the channel and subscribe and follow my antics and my tutorials, and hopefully you'll enjoy what I have to offer you guys. But more or less, that is what you need to know in order to build a rally trap. So thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.